Welcome to Alabama Care, everybody. I'm Sarah Williams, and today I have Elizabeth Patton and AC Petit. Elizabeth Patton is the program coordinator for Disability Rights and Resources, and AC Petit is the peer advocate. And today we're going to be talking about peer advocacy and peer support. So my first question is, what is Disability Rights and Resources?
So we are a federally mandated private nonprofit that works to help cross disabilities, anybody with a disability and any age, to kind of become independent, really adhere to that independent living philosophy. Systemic advocacy. The Rehab Act mandated that there is a Center for Independent Living in every state. Currently, there's about 400 in the country, and our state actually is covered by 4. There's a Center for Independent Living in Mobile, one in Montgomery, one in North Alabama, and then we cover the 20 counties in the mid, kind of that Birmingham section. And like I was saying, we're federally mandated to provide core services to people with disabilities in order for them to kind of become independent and be able to speak with their own voices.
Did you want to say anything, AC? Elizabeth got it? So they're basically everywhere in the state.
Yeah, absolutely. Every single county is covered by a center for independent living somewhere in the state of Alabama. The one in North Alabama is relatively new. They've really just started up about a year ago, and they're now just accepting consumers and things like that. One in Birmingham, we've been around for, oh gosh, our director Dan Kessler is going to get me because I can't remember the exact, I believe we're going on our 40th anniversary. It's in August. I'm going to plan the party, and I just can't remember what the year is. I think it's 40 years. And we helped develop the one in Mobile. I know we've been around for a very long time. It's really true. Some amazing things. So very proud to be part of the organization.
So how did y'all both get involved with DRR and advocacy in general?
So as far as advocacy goes for myself, I advocated a lot for the people I worked with. Prior to working with Disability Rights and Resources, I was with AIDB and then ADRS, the Vocational Rehabilitation System, and really advocated for the people I was working with to become employed when I was working there. When the job came up at DRR, I was really excited to transfer because the idea of being able to work with individuals holistically across all platforms, beyond just vocational and beyond just getting a job, and not just work with people, but that concept of they have their own voice, and to be able to help them understand that they have their own voice and I don't need to speak for them, right? That's kind of what we're all about. And so through that, it really helped me to learn to be my own self-advocate, and my voice has grown even more since then. In the last 4.5 years I've been with DRR.
What about you, AC? Hey, Clifton, I'm not able to hear AC.
Same.
Yeah, he's muted, I think.
Okay.
Sorry, y'all. That's my bad.
There we go.
It's okay.
I muted myself earlier. I forgot. Anyway.
It's okay.
Yeah, so December 2018, I was diagnosed with cancer, and the whole first half of 2019, I was fighting that, doing chemo and all that. I'm about to come up on 2 years remission, so yay for that. But yeah, when I came out of that, I had already done like a little volunteering, was already involved a little bit, but I really amped it up, got involved in like mutual aid, direct action projects, racial solidarity and things of that nature. And through the groups I was working with doing that, I have a friend who was already on staff at DRR, and when the position came available, you know, they thought I'd be a good fit, so they hooked us up, and it's been fantastic. It's been life changing for me. Being able to work with folks and help get them where they need to be. And yeah, you know, like Elizabeth said, a lot of times, you know, folks that we work with don't really know that we're struggling too, and working
Right.
with them and just fighting through their fight with them, they're actually, you know, quietly without sometimes even knowing, helping us with our own fight. So
Right.
it's a great time.
That's a really good way to put it. And I'm so happy they did recommend you, because from that first phone call, there was no doubt that that AC was one of us, I'll say, and has really worked to take the peer advocacy position and make it about building our community, which is what we're all about. So it's been great.
So, what is peer advocacy and peer support? And are they like the same thing, or are there any differences?
There's definitely some differences. AC, if you don't mind, I'll take the boring legislative, you know, kind of like what it is and what the process is and all that kind of boring stuff, and then you can take it away with the dynamic part about kind of what that philosophy means to us and how it looks on a day-to-day basis. So when you come to Disability Rights and Resources, we have 3 peer advocates. So AC is our peer advocate in the, I get it wrong every time, the eastern half of the state. And if it's western AC, I apologize. Yeah. I always have to picture it in my head. We have Rakira Tidmore and Nikki Watkins, who are also our peer advocates. And so their role is to really provide those core services that were mandated by the Rehab Act to provide. So they provide independent living skills training, peer support, nursing home transition, that's helping somebody move from a nursing home back to the community. They help people who are in danger of going into a nursing home to stay in their homes. And then we help people, youth, transition from like high school into adulthood. Those are, again, those are the core services, but nobody really comes to our center and says, hey, I want peer support, or hey, I want to transition, right? Like nobody speaks that way. And so, but that is what the peer advocates do. They do an amazing job of it. But what it really looks like is holistic kind of support of the individual person and learning to use their voice. And I'll let AC kind of talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that's it. You know, like Elizabeth said, you know, folks know that they need help with something, but don't necessarily know which one of our not so plain language services I may fall into. So we sit down with them and just kind of let them know, you know, where we come from, because working with us, and I think this should hold true for all centers for independent living, is different than working with a lot of other agencies that do similar work. And I think, you know, people can be kind of off-put by having to have dealt with a lot of other agencies in the past who do a lot of, you know, means testing and for lack of better terms, you know, shaming, and aren't really like empathetic and things of that nature, because, you know, they don't have the lived experience to support that. So up front, we like to let all of our consumers know that the majority of us are people with disabilities. You know, like I said, I've dealt with cancer. I'm a cancer survivor, and mental health issues and things of that nature. But we really just try to, you know, make them feel at home and let people know that we're in this together, and, you know, share our stories and then learn their stories. From there, we're able to gauge, you know, which core services they need the most, and develop what we call an independent living plan around that. So the independent living plan establishes a goal, and then establishes what we as staff and the consumer themselves will do to accomplish those goals, because you know what we do is we build community and we work with people through their problems. We don't do things for people, because even though a lot of times there's this people think that people with disabilities are incapable, and that's not always the case.
Right.
We they have the independent living philosophy hammers down on this aspect called the dignity of risk. So, a lot of times with guardianship, with parents or caretakers, they kind of keep people with disabilities under their thumb, and don't want them to take that risk because they're scared they're failed, but they will fail. Sorry. But like anyone can fail, and that's what promotes growth, right? So people
Exactly.
with disabilities, yeah, definitely deserve that dignity. And so as peer advocates, we work with them. Sometimes it does mean advocacy. It means advocating for them with doctors, landlords, insurance companies, utility companies, or whatever their certain situation is. And sometimes it's more support where, they have an idea of what to do themselves and are, confident that they can approach it themselves, and kind of just need to bounce those ideas off of someone, or, kind of just get that encouragement to do it. So,
Right.
yeah, that's the difference between advocacy and support, and how we do both at DRR.
Yeah, I just had to. I'm 26 years old, and I just had to advocate for myself literally like a couple of days ago, and it still isn't easy, even at 26.
Right, for sure.
Well, it's not easy, and I think something we've been discovering this year, and we've been talking a lot about at DRR, is this idea that so often people with disabilities, it's expected by themselves, because it's been kind of ingrained in us, and also by society, that we don't self-advocate, that you need to be connected to a parent, a church, an organization, there's just a lot of nursing home transition is a good example. People individually cannot apply for the waiver. They have to be kind of referred by an agency, right? Or the bill that's on the House floor today for people who are blind or low vision need to be certified by AIDB in order to absentee vote, right? There's this concept of we need to be connected to somebody else to speak for us. And I think that's really, when we talk about peer support and advocacy, that's really kind of what DRR is all about, is making sure that we can all self-advocate.
Right. Okay, so you have already kind of touched on this, but talk about the process of working with peer advocate from beginning to, I don't want to say end,
right?
But because I don't think it actually really ends. But just moving forward.
Yeah. Right. No, exactly. I'm so glad you asked, because this is really what we wanted to talk to everybody about on the call today. So I'll talk about the boring stuff, because I do love some good policy and procedure and boring stuff. I'm very all about the red tape. But so if you go to our website, drradvocates.org, and you click on services, there's an application for services. And so that is the first step. So you'll complete that. It's many, many pages. What we ended up doing was rolling our intake form into just the application, so we didn't have to do more paperwork than was needed. And by we, I mean people with disabilities, the consumers. So it asks basically, what services are you interested in? And it describes them. So it describes independent living skills training, peer support. Do you want to get to know other people with disabilities? And it lists all of those services. And that's the first step, is you apply online. If you aren't able or want some assistance with applying online, you can call Heather Sims at 205-251-2223. She is our amazing information referral specialist. And hopefully we'll get a chance to, on another Alabama Cares, talk about her services, but she can help assist with filling out that application. And then from there, it's referred to a peer advocate. And the first meeting will be established, and goals will be written between the peer advocate and the consumer, and I will let AC go from there.
Yeah, so we talked about, establishing that IOP, and then we just, we do the work, whatever we decide needs to be done by the staff and by the consumer, and we, sometimes that means the consumer doing things by themselves immediately, and us doing things by ourselves immediately. Sometimes it means us working together and doing things together. But we try to. It's really depends on the circumstance, but we try to touch base. Depending on caseload and the specifics of the situation. At least once a month. And establish, goal dates like that, do this, let's have this done by 3 weeks time. Let's have this done by a month. I have, one consumer I work with right now is working on a really big project. And, because of their schedule, they don't have a lot of time to work on it. So it's like, okay, let's come back in 3 months. That's kind of like, not the standard, but everything's tailor fit, to the consumer. And so, we make progress as we go, and the end goal is, determined. And then in a lot of situations, consumers got a lot of things that they want to accomplish. And so we complete one goal and then move on to the next. When we initially have a conversation, we like to talk about like the macro, the overall goal, right? And then kind of break it down into like, pieces we can chew off and handle it a little bit at a time.
Right.
But definitely, like we touched on, we really want to build community. So, what we like to see and what we have seen happen, quite a bit in the past is that, people come in, requesting our services and then end up in, peer support groups or disability coalitions as volunteers with us, advocating for, their peers on a volunteer basis with us. So it's really great. The way that works out, it doesn't work like that for everyone. Some people, might not have the capacity. Some days we feel like we have capacity, so that's understandable. But definitely, it's always open door DRR. We want to see everybody stay with us for the long run.
Our overall goal is really to build that disability coalition, that disability community, so that we have people we can rely on and support, and then we can, as a group, make those bigger systemic changes. That's really our goal. We talk a lot about like the Maslow's hierarchy, right? So we get a lot of calls from people who are struggling right now, especially during the pandemic, to find an accessible, affordable home or to be able to pay their light bills and keep the lights on. And so people, when they're in that position, right, they're not concerned about, let me go to the Alabama Disability Action Coalition meetings and fight for, students to get a graduate, to get more than just a certificate of completion, because they're not there yet, right? So the peer advocates really work to get through those kind of Maslow's, those hierarchies. And our goal for everybody is that at some point they can become kind of part of our community and really make those systemic advocacy moves with us. And like AC was saying, if they're not there yet, that's okay too. We're always here. That's kind of our whole thing this year has been, let's make a nice, an atmosphere where people feel comfortable to be themselves and to talk about their disability. So.
Right. Especially this year. It's been a year.
Exactly. Exactly. It has definitely been a year. I will say that the pandemic has been, it's just, something, I don't want to talk too highly about it because it's been so awful for so many people, but I will say that it has been a huge opportunity for our Center for Disability Rights and Resources through the new staff we have, the idea of coming home and doing some virtual trainings, and then of course our CARES Act funding has really allowed us to grow. So it's been good for us, but it's been a rough year.
Yeah, definitely been able to, you know, what we saw accompany this pandemic was accommodations that people with disability have been asking for a long time, and been told that it's not
Mhm.
possible, that it's not logical, that it doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
And as soon as
Right.
we see the pandemic, we see these things implemented immediately. Remote work, you know,
Exactly.
and
Telehealth.
remote
Yeah.
everything. So right,
Yeah.
right, yeah, telehealth. So you know, we definitely it really is. We got a lot of stuff that we have developed and a lot of stuff in the works about, you know, how we outreach to people, you know, in rural areas who can't necessarily get out to us, and you know, people with, you know, accessibility issues, transportation issues, things of that nature. So, you know, a blessing and a curse, but
Yeah.
you know, one big thing that we talk about a lot within our groups at DRR is the concern that when people feel like the pandemic is under control, that we lose these accommodations. So that's something,
Right.
definitely something that we're fighting for, that we integrate this accessibility, even if we have some
Mhm.
type of return to normal, right?
Right.
Right. That is something that I've seen, that they are afraid that they will lose
Mhm.
all these accommodations that they
Mhm.
are suddenly have now because
Yeah.
it's apparently appropriate.
Right. Right. But it goes back to what we were talking about. And I don't want to derail this whole interview, but it goes back to what we were talking about, that people with disabilities aren't taken seriously unless comes from somebody else speaking for us, right? So for years, we've been
Right.
asking for accommodations. And like AC was saying, no, you can't work from home. No, you can't have a flexible schedule. And now suddenly it's okay. So anyway, that's off on another
Anyway.
topic. I apologize.
Let's see. We've already kind of talked about the goal of working with peer advocates. But if there's anything else that y'all would like to.
I think just the idea that what I'd like to get across to people watching, because so often, you know, we've talked a little bit about that idea that the agencies and society looks at people with disabilities as not having their own voice. But I think one of the biggest challenges we face is that within our own community, within the disabled community, people also have internalized that. And so we get a lot of calls from people who, I'm just going to use this as an example, like, I'm going out of town, I need a cat sitter, can you guys find me a cat sitter, right? And it's like, well, that's not really our role. And so a lot of people come to us, and so what I'd like to kind of get across to the viewers is that we're here to work together and support people in kind of finding their own independent voice, but we're not going to be doing things for people, right? So one of the ways we go about doing that in the cat scenario, let's say, is like, okay, well, what are your options? You could stay home, you could ask a friend, you could hire somebody, you could, you know, all of those kind of that's more of what we do. And then also the breaking down of the goals. So if the goal is to go to Lakeshore and join the basketball team, the first thing might be, you know, how will you get to Lakeshore? Do you have transportation? If not, that'll be one small goal. Let's work on that transportation piece. Once we get that check, the next step is, you know, is there a scholarship? Have you applied for the scholarship to go to Lakeshore? Okay, yeah, check.
Right.
So just kind of getting that whole process across to people is really what I wanted to do today. AC?
Gotcha.
Yeah, no, I think that's it. You know, we definitely get some calls that are outside of our purview, for sure, and you know, a lot of people. I think that's why, you know, we appreciate being on here, you know, monthly for the past few months and going forward a little bit, and you know, whatever opportunities we get to really explain what it is we do. So I got a call from someone the other day who thought I was a lawyer. I said, "Don't I wish? Don't I wish? I know. My wife and kids wish I wish I was, but Yeah, so you know, it's we like to work with and not for folks. And you know, it's all about empowering people, and you know, I think the biggest thing, like especially like prior to um the name change and really a lot of the work that's happened, I think in the past, you know, 3 or 4 years at DRR, you know, folks were really calling to be like, I need a nursing home. And we were like, no, we do the exact opposite of that. Like, we empower people with disabilities and let them do for themselves and live independently.
Right.
You know, that's what it's about. So,
Right.
That's absolutely what it's about, and that actually does bring up another good point, AC. We often get calls from parents who call and say, you know, like, hey, my daughter is, you know, 26 and she just lays on the couch and does nothing. I need you guys to work with her. Kind of that kind of mentality.
Yeah.
And so we'll always say to the parents, you're welcome to come, you're welcome to sit in on these meetings, but we're really going to be talking to the person with a disability.
Right.
So you might think they need to go out and get a job, but if the person with a disability is completely happy to sit on the couch all day, then that's not our place to tell them that that's not what they need to be doing, right?
Exactly.
So that whole kind of really supporting the person with a disability, I think, is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, that also brings another good point for me. When I worked for ADRS for about 3 years as their youth consultant, and I would get calls from parents and that there's nothing really for people over the age of 21 with a disability. So I guess y'all would like help with that kind of stuff.
We would. So, you know, when you say there's nothing for individuals over the age of 21, I kind of go back to that. Well, that's not true. There's the whole world, right?
Right.
When I was 21, my disability is not a visible disability. And so when I was 21, I went to college. I did, you know, lived in my own apartment. I made so many mistakes. You know what I mean? Like, and so I would, you know what I mean? Like when you're, gosh, when you're 21, the mistakes you made. And I figured it out, and I, you know, whittled my way to where I am now. And so I would say to those parents, the whole world is out there. And we would probably sit down with that person, that 21-year-old, and just, because that is one of our core services, is helping them to transition to adulthood. What do you see for yourself, right? Like that's the first big question. What do you see for yourself? And then how are we going to get there? And so I would say, in my opinion, that's you know, parents can do it on their own individually. They can support their children with disabilities that way, or they can always call us, and we will gladly bring them into the disability community.
Right.
It's definitely wild in my short time at DRR. I've seen folks who you would think would like be the most discouraged and like really feel like this is hopeless. Why am I even still going? You have more hopes and dreams and more goals and be more determined and driven, you know, than folks whose, you know, issues may not even be as compromising on like, you know, a physical or mental level, right? And I think it's got a lot to do with community and environment. So, you know, definitely that's what we're for, is to, you know, encourage folks and give people that hope. You know, Elizabeth spoke on Maslow's hierarchy. So, you know, holler at us and let's figure out what that is on that base level that's got you like, God, I can't go on. And we'll hammer that out. And then we'll look at the bigger picture. Because, you know, you can ask somebody, what do you want to do with your life? And, you know, when their environment or their community around them, when everything is hopeless, you know, they're going to take that in sponge. So, you know, we got to address that, and then they can start saying.
Exactly.
And I'd also say there's a lot of activities that we have going on right now at DRR. We're starting up a peer support group that AC is going to run, which I'm so excited about. We have we host the Alabama Disability Action Coalition, which has 2 committees. There's a public health committee and a poverty and injustice committee. We do quarterly happy hour events, which are social events for people with disabilities to talk about large issues that affect them with just people with disabilities, right? Not being spoken to, but us kind of being able to like a happy hour, just casually talk about having a disability and what that means. So my recommendation to anybody listening, any parent listening, anybody that has family member, come to some of those events. We're going to list them on our Facebook, or they'll be on our website. Come to those events. You will never be called out. You will never be. Oh, thank you so much, AC. Yeah, AC is going to drop them in the chat too. You'll never be called out. Like, so you can come listen. And not be expected to do anything on those. I know for me, I don't like to go to places where I might be put on the spot and not expected.
Might be forced, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's not going to happen. So you would get a chance to come and just listen in and see if it's for you. See if the independent living philosophy and our movement is really for you.
Gotcha. Okay, so what's like the most challenging thing and the most rewarding thing about peer advocacy?
I'm going to let AC go as soon as when I'm done, but I think for me, the most rewarding thing has been the events that we have hosted this year and the people involved in them. I think the happy hour events have been incredible to be able to see people that we didn't know who had disabilities come on to these events. Like we had one that was like the intersection of feminism and ableism, or the idea of what it's like to be a parent with a disability, right? So to see people in our community that I've never met come to these events, that to me has been the most rewarding, to see that all of the work we put in for the last 4.5 years to build the team we have, to build the one-on-one services, have brought us to having people on the Disability Action Coalition who are people with disabilities using their voice. To me, that's been the most rewarding, hands down, hands down. I think the most challenging for me is kind of what I already talked about, trying to explain the independent living philosophy and how we do things to callers when they're in that position of, I just need a house, can you go find me a house, kind of, and to really try and explain it to them. That's a challenge. I think our staff does a great job, but it is a challenge.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely gotta agree with the most challenging part. A lot of times, like not even the consumers themselves, but back to that, the guardianship thing, and parents and caretakers, that's not who we cater to. That's not who we're here for. Like, we got love for you and all that, and it's about building a team for the consumer, and obviously you're a major part of that team. But when you come to us, you got to understand that we're building that team around that person, not around you.
Right. Right.
So there's that, and then it's just like the systemic stuff, like trying to these people, it's hard for us to navigate some of these systems and maneuver these systems. They call us for help because they can't figure it out, and then sometimes we struggle with it. And that's by design. That's not because we're or anything like that. These systems are just designed to keep people down. And so that's the most frustrating thing. I think, we're just fortunate to be hella motivated by it, and to really have a lot of good friends who are the same way, and who we can tag in when we stumble upon challenges too. We talk about building community. It takes a village, so we said, we're here to help the consumers. The consumers sometimes help us. sometimes we get stuck. We reach out to other friends we have. Um, so in the same bit, taking those challenges sometimes can be the most rewarding part is when we're able to overcome those systemic barriers
Right.
and things like
Mhm.
that. So, and then again, like Elizabeth said, just anytime we have a consumer um, stick around for the long run and really become a staple in the community.
My mom always says it takes a village thing, like
Yeah, for
specifically for
sure.
me.
Yeah,
There's
it does.
there's so
It
many
does. And if I
people
can,
involved.
well, and if I can say anything to anybody that's listening about what DRR is, we're the village. Like that's our kind of our goal, right? Is we're the village. Not only the folks that work at DRR, but the people that have become our peer mentors, who carry on kind of those peer advocacy services beyond what our staff can do. The Disability Action Coalition calls, that's kind of the environment we want to provide, is that village environment. So anybody peer, it doesn't need to be, we talked a lot about people with disabilities, but we would love allies to join us, agencies, that want to join us. So just building that village.
Okay, are there any specific success stories that y'all can think of, for peer advocating, or just advocating in general?
I should prepare for these because Alex asked me last time about success stories as well, and I paused there as well and was like, I think we have a consumer we are working with who I think is the best success story. So he started with our CARES Act. Well, actually, he started as just requesting peer advocacy services, and then received some help through our CARES Act funding program that we have right now, and has been working with us for about over a year now. Managed he now has housing. There are some issues with the housing, but he has housing. We're working through the issues. And what we've seen is he is now a leader on the Disability Action Coalition calls, right? Like he speaks his mind. We had a call with the Alabama Department of Public Health, and he was able to say what he needed to say to those people that had power. And he is one of our peer mentors. So I think, to me, when I think success story, that's what I think. You start here, and man, you go all the way through, and like we talked about earlier, you're if you don't want to leave the village, you don't have to, right? You just transition to a different part of the village. And so I'm going to cry when I start talking about it, but just that whole concept is really what we're all about. And so to watch him do that has been amazing.
Yeah,
I'm a crier when I get emotional.
Yeah, definitely, that story for sure. And just a lot of small wins too, especially with COVID, and when we did the CARES Act program, that was specific. We had a lot of folks who just really got in a bind because of COVID, and we were able to help a lot of people out. One of the first early success stories I had, was had a fella hit us up. He was helping take care of his mom, and she was on oxygen, and he was kind of the breadwinner, and he had lost his job because of COVID, and the power bill got behind, but they needed the power bill to run her oxygen machine. And he was proactive in looking for work, and even getting with the doctors, and getting written statements and getting those to the power company, and they still shut them off.
Wow.
So we were able to get with them through our CARES Act program, determined that they were eligible and that we would be able to financially assist them with that. And then I was able to make a call to Alabama Power and say, hey, it's on the way, cut the power back on. And then they did, which is great, because that's like a life-threatening situation.
Right.
And you'll have that from big corporations and stuff who don't don't much care about people, but that's what we're here for. Because if you don't, even in situations like that where you have these large corporations and such. Like those ain't nothing without the people that run them.
Yeah.
So we're about the people. So if you forget that, we're gonna remind you. Um, but yeah, just a lot of small wins like that. Getting
Right.
somebody's rent paid, getting somebody, and we're fortunate enough that we've been able to, with the CARES Act funds, provide some of this ourselves. But prior to, and once we don't have those funds anymore, which is probably going to smack us in the face, sooner than we think.
Yeah.
Um, we help people, find other programs and
Yeah.
agencies that can assist them with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
And I mean, on a daily, we hear a lot of success stories that aren't giant success stories like the one I was talking about, or they're those little success stories where somebody calls and they just need you to listen. And at the end of the
Right.
call, gonna cry again. At the end of the call, they say, "Thank you so much. Nobody's listened to me," or "Oh my gosh, you guys have disabilities too. That's amazing. I feel like I've been so welcomed." And that to me, those are the success stories, because even though they might not
Right.
go through and continue working with the peer advocate, or they might not join our advocacy, systemic advocacy groups, just that little bit, they know we're there. They know that somebody's out there listening. That to me is a success story.
Right. I remember when I was working at ADRS, and I did a teen transition clinic, and some of the people, or the kids that would come in there, they would see me in my wheelchair and then be like, "Oh, that's so cool that you're working," and like getting out. And I would talk to them about my college experience, and it's just like them realizing that, oh, I can do this.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Peer support right there. That's
Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
what we're all about, is like, hey, look at us, we're people with disabilities. We're doing things, and we have struggles, and we
Yeah.
have successes, and yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I think that's where I finally got it, was, oh, I can help someone else just by literally doing what I'm doing.
Exactly.
Yep.
Living your truth and telling your story. That's what
Yeah.
it's funny. It's funny. Recently when I kind of took the lead on ADAC, it's like, fill everyone in about yourself, AC. And I'm like, I'm tired of telling my story. I've told it so many times, but the group was quick to remind me that that's what it's about, and that telling your story just does something for others. Just
Exactly.
being able to relate, and seeing the things you've overcome, and when someone's in a position where something like that, you can, something that it's hard to see the end of the tunnel when you're going through it,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So you've already been, and then you tell the story about it. The person who's going through it then can be like, okay, so it's possible. So
Yeah, I can make it through this.
Exactly. And I think that's been the biggest, as far as an agency goes, I think that's been one of our biggest success stories outside of consumers, is just the fact that we now talk about that kind of stuff within our agency. We talk about the struggles we're going through. We talk about our disabilities. We are part of the community. We are not separate.
Right.
And that's been a big change in the last 4.5 years, I think, which has been wonderful.
Right. Let's see. Okay, so how do people get in touch with disability rights and resources? Like the contact. I think AC had put something in the chat about it.
So we have this amazing receptionist. Her name is Sparrow. And if you call 205-251-2223, you'll get Sparrow. And she will get you to whoever you need. one of the first ways is to call that number and try and get connected with Heather Sims, who is our information and referral specialist. So if you were to contact her, you could start with, I'm a person with a disability and I don't know where to start. I need resources. And so that would be a good place to start. We have a website. It's drradvocates.org. We got a Facebook page. Nikki and AC and Chris Jones have worked hard on getting our Instagram up and our Twitter up. Am I missing any other places, AC?
I don't think so. The only other thing that I would say is just via email, and I'll drop that. I'll drop the general email that goes to
perfect.
Our executive director to dish out to the appropriate place.
See if there have been any other comments. Nikki Watkins said, AC, we missed your lovely voice. That was after you had gotten off mute.
Yeah. That's clowning me for having myself muted and then trying to, butter it up at time. I see. I see.
That comment came in right after you had gotten off mute. See. Maria Gutierrez said, you both have been very helpful and I appreciate all you do.
We appreciate Maria. Let me just tell you, she has been amazing to work with. Hey, we do not take advantage of your services as much as we should, but I know that I'm happy to know they're out there. So thank you for working with us.
For sure.
Maria also said, Miss Heather and Mr. AC are awesome, and also so glad to be putting a face to the name.
Oh yeah, that's been the hardest thing about when you're talking about struggling. We have an amazing staff. Our staff right now is just incredible. I can't say enough. Dang it! Every darn time I start crying. I just can't say enough about them. And a lot of them have come on after the pandemic, and so many. AC and I've only met in person once. We have Rakira Tidmore, who's our other peer advocate. I have never met her in person. And so the fact that we've done all of this without meeting each other, but it's absolutely true that I do kind of miss that one-on-one when we're talking peer support and peer advocacy. There is something about being able to see somebody in person that we do miss. But,
right. Yeah. And Nikki Watkins also said, it's all love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Okay, so I know it's COVID and we're all working from home, but how could someone potentially volunteer when things get back to normal?
AC, I'm going to let you take that one because we've got a lot of great opportunities.
So as far as volunteering, right? Like I said, we like to build community, right? So we don't, I don't know that we really got anything in place where it's just just come volunteer to volunteer. Definitely just join these events. I've dropped a bunch in there. We've got the peer support group. It's going to kick off May 27th at 2 o'clock via Zoom. I dropped that link in the chat. And I think that's going to be one of the best opportunities just for that mutually beneficial thing, right? That's why I don't necessarily like to say we want volunteers, because volunteers is we're just going to go do something and then be done with it. like, you know, help somebody else and then feel good because we help somebody else. But really what we do is like mutual aid. It's like mutually beneficial stuff, building community. So, you know, with the peer support, I think that's a good opportunity to volunteer by telling your story, and then being there for other people. And I think that's the relationships that I foresee coming from that are going to be so crazy, right? Because, you know, the way I see that playing out is kind of just like how it's been for me joining DRR, right? Just with the staff in the community. And so that's what I see happening, and the peer support is, you know, people who haven't had relationships or interactions with us before, you know, don't even just necessarily come to the peer support group and participate in that and build relationships with us as a staff, but with one another.
Right.
And then, you know, maybe we'll have them, you know, leading the group one month or you know,
Exactly.
like and so, you know, Elizabeth spoke on our happy hours that we've done in the past that have been super successful. Of those, we did one back in February where we had this wild idea to do a healthcare advocacy project. So I'll drop that in the chat too.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, we did a video, and what we you know, rallied community, a lot of our staff, some of our colleagues from North Alabama, and then just, you know, people from the consumer outside of from the community outside of the organization, just to tell our healthcare stories about like the atrocities we've been through, you know, from lack of insurance, or a lot of these people have insurance. Some of these people have private insurance. It's supposed to be great insurance, right? And just, you know, kind of talking about all the flaws with that and how we really need healthcare reform. And so that's an opportunity, you know, that developed from one of the events, and then we kind of did some outreach on social and just connecting with people we knew in the community. But definitely, if you know, if you have any ideas or if you want to get involved in any of these and you don't know how, I've dropped as many links as I possibly can in the chat. But definitely email us, call us, any of these emails from the staff, the general email, the main hotline. Just reach out. You know, that's a lot of what we do. You know, Elizabeth mentioned Sparrow, who is at the front desk. She's got a lot of answers. If she don't, she'll with Heather. Heather's got a lot of answers, and Heather will real quick reach out to one of us if she doesn't know the answer. So it's just about establishing that contact, and we'll make something happen.
Right.
Really, yeah, really well said. Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add, and you already said it perfectly, is we're thinking of folks as like participants or community members and allies and people with disabilities, not so much as volunteers. But yeah, please come join whatever you'd like to join.
Okay, so y'all have actually kind of gone over this. Any upcoming events?
I don't know if Nikki's watching or AC, if you can remember off the top of your head, and I apologize that I don't have the date in my mind. Last month, we did this amazing Independent Living Advocacy Day. It was incredible. It was all virtual. We used to go to Montgomery, and as a big group, there's usually about 200 of us that went. But this year it was virtual, and we had several of our legislators on who came to speak. We talked about all of the bills that were up this session, different disability rights issues, like having, for example, representation of a person with a disability on the transportation board, just all kinds of different topics. It was a wonderful event, and what we're doing is a follow-up event to that in May, and that's what I don't remember the date to, and I'm hoping somebody on staff who's watching will put that in the chat for me. But we do have a follow-up event to that where we're going to get back together and say, okay, have you gone to your legislators? Thank you so much. May 11th. Thank you so much, AC. Have you gone to your legislators? What did they say? What's our next step as a group? How did it go? And so I want to really shout that one out, because that's a great way to join something where you can hear when we talk about systemic advocacy, what does that mean? What does it look like, without, again, having to like really be put on the spot for anything.
Right.
And then the peer support group, which I'll let AC talk about, but I'm super, super excited. Something I've been wanting to see happen for years. So I'm really excited we're getting it off the ground.
Yeah,
I actually
May
would
27th.
love to hear about the peer support group more.
Yeah. May 27th at 2:00, and we're liable. We're liable to play with the time or whatever and see. We try to be, as accessible and inclusive as possible. So we'll see what works best for folks. But yeah, we plan to do it the last Thursday of every month. Going forward from there. For now, we're gonna do it on Zoom. We're gonna gauge interest and see how folks feel about it. But we've talked about the potential of live streaming it on Zoom. I think that's a good way to be accessible. I think more people have Facebook than have Zoom, even though it's probably getting close these days with the pandemic and all.
Right.
And then I think it's like a good entry point for people who are timid and kind of hesitant to join, to just kind of watch from an outside perspective. But we'll see how that go. We may do 2 separate groups, because we want everybody to feel like it's a safe space too, and we don't really want to put people out there if they don't want to be out there. So definitely that's something we'll gauge and consider the pros and cons of. But regardless of how that plays out, what will accompany the virtual peer support group that we're going to start on Zoom is something that actually already exists, and that's our Facebook peer support group. So we're looking to kind of revamp that. We're going to have Rakira take the reins on that, and she and I will work together with the actual virtual peer support group and the Facebook group to kind of reflect each other, and that Facebook group kind of being the in-between. The virtual will meet monthly, and then if anybody needs to reach out, ask questions, fill anybody in on anything, just keep touch through that Facebook group. We'll do announcements there and things like that. So yeah, still kind of in development, but it's going to be great. We've got a lot of from other SEALs around the country who have already implemented, programs that we don't hope to be as great as one day. But progress is the process, so we're on the way.
We are super excited about it. It'll look something like, peer support group is different from, say, a systemic advocacy like the Disability Action Coalition, where we're really coming together to write policy or to make some kind of big change in Alabama. The peer support group is really about the individuals with disabilities coming together and supporting each other in what they're going through in their life. So it might be, gosh, I really want to move out of my parents' house, but I don't even know where to start. And so the peer support group is really about hey man, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Like, that's kind of the whole concept of it. And like AC was saying, they'll go together hand in hand, the Facebook group and the actual live or virtual type of group. So the Facebook group will be there to provide support throughout the week, throughout the month, and then we'll do the in-person group. So we're really excited about it.
So can anyone join that peer support group? Because that would be good for me.
Oh my gosh, we would love anybody to join. I will say that the only prerequisite is that you have to have a disability. We really want to keep that sacred and have it be a place where people with disabilities can talk amongst themselves. So, but yes, anybody can join.
Let's see. I actually think that was all my questions. So, do y'all have any like last things?
I think I don't. I think I have I feel like I've covered it all. I've said everything I wanted to say. I threw it all out there, and y'all have it now. And
I think it's great. Just really want to encourage folks to participate in these events and reach out to us and get involved. We're all about building community. So definitely thanks for the opportunity. Having us here today to talk about it and let people know.
yeah,
Absolutely.
for sure. And it was so nice to meet you, Sarah.
You too.
And again, yeah, thanks for the interview, because it really is great for us to be able to get this across to so many people. It's something it's a struggle of ours to get this across to people. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, I was excited to be able to get to do this one because I've heard of disability rights and resources, but I don't live in Birmingham or
Yeah.
anywhere. So and I'm back and forth right now, so I don't really get a chance to come just visit. And see
Oh
what's
yeah,
going
yeah,
on.
exactly. Yeah.
And
Well, we would love to
COVID.
see your face again,
So-
for sure. And COVID, exactly. And COVID.
Yeah. Yeah, so thanks for actually letting me be able to do this.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
Great.
I think that's all the questions. Yeah, there's nothing else in the chat. So, we are gonna sign off, I think.
Awesome.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Alex. Thanks everybody.
Bye, y'all.